George! George!
There was no answer. Jody noticed something in the mud. She dropped to her haunches and examined the indentation in the dirt. It was strange. It looked like some sort of footprint, but not a human one.
What do you think made this?
Ray briefly glanced at the indentation and dismissed it.
Fuck knows.
He continued to call,
George!
Still no answer, just the silence of a cold winter's night in the secluded countryside.
Let's try the petrol station. See if they've seen either George or Javier tonight.
Ray stalked off back to the car. Jody sprang to her feet to follow and stopped in her tracks and listened. An eerie, rattling noise began to drift over the fog-shrouded field.
Can you hear that? What the hell is that?
Ray had completely disappeared into the fog.
The wind.
Jody decided she was not going to hang about and hastily made her own way back to the relative safety of the Ford Focus. Keely Alfonso's stress levels were increasing by the second as she paced the kitchen of the Pine Trees Care Home's main building. Her colleague and night worker from one of the smaller subsidiary buildings, Aaron, was trying his best to calm her down.
I think you're worrying unnecessarily. He wouldn't leave the kids alone with no electricity, would he?
Yeah, I told you he's a prick.
I know, but if you get caught, you'll lose your job. You know what the management's like. They could check up any time.
Keely opened one of the window blinds and looked out.
I doubt it in this weather, and it'll only take a minute in a car to go home and check Lauren's okay.
Drive in this weather.
Aaron interjected.
Be quicker to walk.
Lauren sounded worried. Ryan's ill and fuck knows where Javier is. In those circumstances.
I do know what you're saying, but...
Unless...
Keely gave Aaron a smile and a look of helpless desperation. She knew Aaron liked her, and from experience, she had learnt a little manipulation was a great tool to use on men. Aaron looked at his watch, a fluorescent green designer watch that could withstand harsh temperatures and was endorsed by that survival guy on the teller.
Nice watch,
smiled Keely.
Oh no, Keels, don't flutter your eyelashes at me.
I'll cover for you. Your residents are all in bed. They won't even know you're gone.
Aaron gently shook his head, not convinced.
Oh, I don't know, Keels.
I've got a really good torch in the back of my car, and you're such a strong, virile young man. It'll only take you a couple of minutes to walk to my house from here.
He chuckled incredulously.
Are you taking the piss?
Like you said, it'd be quicker to walk in this weather, please.
She could sense Aaron was weakening.
For me.
He was on the ropes now.
I'll owe you one.
Aaron wilted right in front of her eyes.
You're a bitch.
Yes, got him. Men were so base and predictable, she mused.
Yes, I know, but I'm a caring, worried bitch, and I'll make it up to you.
The manipulated, resigned Aaron gave her a wry smile. He'd always fancied the arse off her, so even the hint of anything, and he was putty in her hands. Janeth, the petrol station owner, was very impressed by the light given off in his shop from the LED battery lantern that was surprisingly good for special offer of $6.99. In fact, he thought a personal recommendation by him would be a major factor in an upcoming promotion he had decided upon due to its performance since the power had gone off.
These are very good, don't you think, Tony?
He said to his staff as he watched Tony put stock onto a shelf.
Yes, and if you notice they have a hook that enables you to hang it up so you can have both hands free to help your staff with any activity.
Tony said sarcastically.
Indeed. But if the job is being done so efficiently, maybe using the light more effectively by holding it for my employees' maximum visual enhancement is a more productive way to help.
In other words, you cannot be asked to help.
I am always impressed by your perception, Tony.
I'm always impressed by willingness to get out of any physical labor, Janeth.
Tony smiled.
Indeed. Why have a dog and bark yourself?
Janeth grinned back. Tony turned to a still anxious Wayne.
What do you think, Wayne? Janeth a lazy git or what?
Wayne was oblivious to conversation and staring out of the shop window. Tony and Janeth shared a knowing look. Tony was beginning to get concerned for Wayne.
You okay, Wayne?
Asked Tony.
Will my dad phone when he's ready to pick me up, Tony?
Of course he will, Wayne.
Janeth leaned towards Tony and whispered in his ear.
Do you want to give the boy a lift home, and I'll finish up here?
No, you're okay, Janeth. I'll stay with the boy and see if his dad turns up. If not, I'll walk him back home.
Janeth nodded okay.
I got some paperwork to do, so if you change your mind.
He turned and started towards his office at the back of the shop.
In the dark.
Quizzed Tony. Janeth turned back and smiled.
I have the lantern.
He held up the lantern still in his hand. The shop plunged back into darkness with the shutting of the office door, and Tony fired up another hand torch.
Don't worry, Wayne. Everything will be all right.
The single-lane country road was flanked by trees on both sides. As Aaron trudged down the road, he thought to himself how the tall branches which hung over the road looked like talons ready to strike in the dark. Aaron zipped his hoodie up to his chin in an effort not only to keep out the chill, but also the uneasiness the dark and thick fog seemed to entice. Holding Keely's torch out in front of him, the visibility was at a yard at best. The still was only occasionally broken by a rustle in the undergrowth or the crow of a night bird. Each sound made an edgy Aaron even edgier. He would every now and then shine the torch at the trees to check he was not being tracked or followed by things that hid in the dark or, in reality, the dark recesses of his overactive imagination. When the strange, eerie rattling filled the night air, Aaron became ever more freaked out. He shone the torch in every direction, but it illuminated nothing but trees. He picked his pace up. It wasn't far to Keely's house, the fog giving way to seemingly endless potholed road. The rattling was not going away. Instead, it was getting louder, closer. He was nearer a run than a walk now, as the anonymous rattling got ever more closer and ever more louder. PC Ray Poskett pulled the police Ford Focus onto the blacked-out garage forecourt.
Will there still be anybody here?
Said Jody.
Only one way to find out,
Replied Ray as he unstrapped and exited the vehicle. Jody followed suit. Ray switched on his torch and shone it in the window of the shop just in time to see Janeth open the shop entrance door.
Hello, Ray.
Janeth greeted.
Wasn't sure if anyone would still be here, Janeth.
What is going on, Ray? No power, no phones working.
Not even the landlines.
Jody interjected.
No mobile signal either. I was hoping you were coming to tell us what the hell is going on.
No idea, mate, sorry. Everything was working in town. But as soon as we got out here...
Ray shrugged. Jody shone her torch to the top end of the shop, to where Tony and Wayne were standing. Tony put his hand up to acknowledge Ray.
Hello, Tony, Wayne.
Ray acknowledged back. He turned to Janeth and said in a quietly,
I see the boys here. You haven't seen George, have you?
I haven't, but I believe he was in earlier and the boy Wayne is waiting for him to pick him up.
Ray and Jody exchanged looks.
Talk to Tony and Wayne, will you? But try not to worry the boy. He's quite a sensitive lad.
Okay, but...
Before Jody could finish, Ray turned back to Janeth.
Can I have a word in your office, Janeth?
Yes, of course.
Janeth proceeded to escort Ray to his office and closed the door after them. Jody joined Tony and Wayne at the shop counter. The Humvee was parked in a passing place lay-by next to Altingham Woods. Jensen Harris was monitoring the motion tracking device, and Norman Black sat cradling a telescoped rifle as he tried to view the best he could through the murky conditions, the countryside opposite the woods, and down to the gentle undulating fields towards a row of 3 houses below.
Anything?
Inquired Black. Harris shook his head.
Don't know why you've got that. It's the tranquilizer we'll need.
Black ignored him and grabbed an infrared sensor scope from a holdall in the back seat of the truck.
Capture, not kill, right?
Continued Harris.
Day I take advice from someone like you is day I give up and go home.
That precise moment the motion tracker bleeped.
Well?
Said Black. Jensen fired the engine and the Humvee moved off towards the signal. Jody, notebook in hand, sensed the rising anxiety in Wayne's voice.
Don't worry, we'll find your dad. He'll be okay.
Wayne's bottom lip began to quiver. Tony comforted him.
He'll be okay.
This man in the BMW.
Jody continued.
He wasn't a very nice man, was he, Tony?
No, he wasn't Wayne.
Do we know who the man was at all?
Said Jody.
I'm not sure of his name. But I do know his wife works nights at the care home just down the road, about 2 miles from here.
Do you know her name?
I'm fairly sure her name is Keeley. But I don't know her second name, I'm afraid. Though I think her husband is Portuguese, if that helps.
Okay.
Jody wrote the details in her notepad as Ray and Janeth appeared from the backroom office.
I haven't seen or heard anything, Ray. Sorry.
Janeth said.
It's all a bit strange, like I said.
Said Ray.
Yes, very. So that's all you need me to do?
Ray contemplated for a second.
Yes, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Jody turned towards Ray.
Everything okay?
Yes.
Said Ray.
Janeth has kindly agreed to drive into town and report to the station and request backup for us and an update on the timescale for a return for power.
Shouldn't we be doing that?
No, we need to check on the local residents and find George.
Jody notices Wayne's agitation.
Are you going to be okay?
I want to wait here for my dad. He said he'd come back.
Well,
He'll be all right here with me, just in case his dad turns up. If not, I'll walk him home later.
Said Tony.
If you're sure.
Said Ray. Wayne nodded and Tony smiled in assurance. Jody gave Wayne a comforting smile.
don't worry, he'll be okay.
The Humvee negotiated the conditions as quickly as possible. Harris was an assured driver, but the visibility was poor and the hard, rugged nature of the vehicle was put to good effect as several times the grass, mud and hedge verges which skirted the country roads were pounded and hammered in the pursuit of speed in the blindness. So when the Humvee shuddered as it drove over an object in the road, it was only Black's eagle-eyed vision that made him grab Harris's arm.
Stop, man. Stop. You've just run over something.
Black yelled. Harris slammed on the brakes and the Humvee came to an abrupt, controlled stop. Black jumped out and ran back up the road where the object had been. Shining a torch along the tarmac, he stopped when his attention was caught by a green fluorescent object. It was Aaron's fluorescent watch, and it was attached to his severed, bloody arm. Black quickly scanned the area with his torch and soon discovered Aaron's blood-soaked torso. No head, no legs, just the torso with 2 puncture holes, one on each side. Back at the Humvee, Harris was checking the motion tracker which emitted a single constant bleep of activity, and it was close. Black appeared carrying Aaron's dripping torso.
You got its position?
Inquired Black.
Yeah,
Harris eyed the object in Black's arms.
we got no time for souvenir collecting.
You just ran it over, man.
Where's the rest of him?
You tell me.
Black nodded towards the bleeping motion tracker.
It's close, man.
Yeah, let's saddle up.
Black threw the torso into the back seat and jumped in the Humvee.
What the fuck you doing? You'll cover the seats in DNA.
Well, we can't leave the goddamn thing behind, man.
Harris shook his head in annoyance as he jumped into the Humvee and gunned the engine in the direction of the tracker bleep. Ken Lomax was a serial recidivist petty criminal. His instincts for sussing when a house's occupants were home or when they were out had been honed over years of minor misdemeanors and casual skullduggery, not to mention the dubious skill of relieving walls of their plasma TVs, even with the room in darkness. Casper was not so deft, nearly dropping his end of the TV as he almost tripped over an unseen nest of tables.
Get a grip, Casper.
Do one, Dad. I didn't see the bloody things.
Just be bloody careful.
Dominic was keeping watch, the best he could in the conditions outside by the deserted outhouse's exterior door. He had protested to his father what a waste of time it was, visibility at a minimum, but he was told in no uncertain terms,
Use your fucking ears.
He did, and as the uncanny, rattling reverberation filled the atmosphere, he felt a cold, involuntary convulsion grip his neck. Trying desperately to squint through the haze in the direction of the sound, it began to get louder, closer. Switching his battery lantern on in the vain hope of illuminating the rattle, he tentatively, ventured forward. Whatever it was close and unnatural. As he edged into mist, his scream would have fragmented the fibers of the most hardened creature. Inside the vacant abode, Casper had leapt out of his skin and dropped the plasma television, causing it to crash to the floor and crack the screen.
What the...
Ken's verbal volley was stopped dead by another blood-fermenting scream and Dominic's desperate beg for help. Ken dropped his end of the plasma TV and shot out of the door and to the exact spot his son had vacated, a second before. A smear of blood soaked the concrete drive and the trail disappeared into the fog. Ken called Dominic's name in desperation, but the only answer was the inexplicable rattle and imminent slaughter. The Humvee swiftly overcome the potholes and blind corners of the Altingham countryside.
How close?
Called Harris.
Real close, man.
Black loaded a tranquilizer dart into the rifle. Daniel Kidd had commandeered the largest office in the Van Cleef installation for himself to overview any problems. At this present moment, his main problem was the operation of the new coffee machine. "Sugar?" he offered.
"Yes, please,"
replied an annoyed Dr. Schoonderbeck. This was all he needed. It was touch and go, whether all would go to plan, and Kidd provided yet another unwanted barrier. Kidd poured some sugar into the cappuccino and handed it to the doctor.
"Why'd you do it, Robert?"
"Don't start creeping up my arse now, you corporate wanker," was Schoonderbeck's immediate thought. But as always, his professionalism and education saved the day.
"Like I said, opportunities like this do not arise very often. I'd be a fool not to take it."
"Well, don't take this the wrong way, but you've not exercised much common sense. If this gets out, you'll be in a lot of trouble."
"This research opens all sorts of doors, Daniel. Cancer treatment, organ replacement, and genetic treatments of all kinds."
"And there was me thinking it was all about greed."
That summed Kidd's kind up to a T.
"But you're a businessman."
"It's a changing world we live in, Robert. I feel we stand at a juncture in our existence."
Schoonderbeck let out a snort of spontaneous laughter.
"Is that your attempt at philosophy?"
"No."
Kidd smiled as he covertly removed a small container from his desk and slipped it into his pocket, unseen by the doctor.
"We live in unpredictable times."
"Exactly."
Schoonderbeck was suddenly energized.
"Security is as important as ever. Think if the U.S. ever had a viral computer attack, like the Olympic Games virus, and the whole weapon system went down. Think how significant a defense devoid of technological constraints, loyal, powerful, and not prone to PTSD. The ultimate and instinctive, psychologically destructive weapon known to man."
Kidd studied the doctor. The man was a naive fool. Perfect.
"Controllable."
"To a certain degree by its controller."
"How?"
"Pheromones."
Kidd suppressed a sly grin. The doctor went to take a drink from his cappuccino. Kidd stopped him.
"But doctor, I've forgotten your sugar."
"But I thought you—"
"No, I forgot, sorry."
Schoonderbeck handed back the cup, and Kidd turned to the cappuccino machine, his back to the doctor, and slyly slipped the contents of the container into Schoonderbeck's cup. He turned to face the doctor once again and handed him the cappuccino.
"There you go, Doc. Tastes sweeter now."
Schoonderbeck drank. Kidd grinned.
"Let's hope we can find a solution that's best for all of us."
The Alfonso house was still in darkness, except for the flicker of a quickly diminishing candle. Ryan Alfonso was huddled into the cushion at the end of the sofa, fast asleep. Lauren was at the other end, beginning to doze in a sitting position. The loud thud on the patio made her spring up from her seat, instantly wide awake and alert. Another loud thud on the door, and Lauren grabbed the candle from the nearby coffee table and warily edged towards the glass door. Carefully separating the blinds, she quickly noticed the liquid dark smear all the way down the glass. She held the candle closer. It was what she had first feared, blood. Her heart missed a beat and her stomach began to do somersaults. A bloodied hand appeared from out of nowhere and clawed at the bottom of the door, making Lauren instinctively jump back. She again dropped the candle, the floor extinguishing it as it fell. The hand smacked the glass, smearing it with more blood.
Lauren, please help me.
The glass door muffled the plea, but Lauren instantly recognized the voice. Casper! Lauren carefully snapped the lock open and slowly edged the doors apart.
Oh, God, please help me.
Casper was clearly in a state of shock as Lauren helped him up and through the door. He began to panic as the strange, eerie rattling began to emanate from the adjoining garden.
What's wrong, Casper? What's happened?
The dozing Ryan snapped out of his drowsy state and sat up bolt straight, petrified, frozen with fear.
Lauren,
he uttered.
We have to go. We have to go.
Lauren helped Casper through the doors and peered into the fog. She saw nothing and only heard the strange rattling get louder as it got closer. Her eyes widened, her stomach tensed, and the chill of sheer, unmitigated terror coursed through her veins.
Oh, my God,
she murmured as the realization of what stood before her sank in. She turned to Ryan, who was now on his feet.
Ryan!
She yelled.
Run!
The source of the tattling was now in the room. Casper whimpered. Ryan stood stunned into stillness.
Run!
Screamed Lauren. Whatever it was big, and as it eased its way towards Lauren, continually analyzing, sensing, seeking, ready to follow its primeval instincts, Lauren froze in terror. Lauren began to sob.